Our scripture verse for today is from 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 21, which reads, "We aim at what is honorable, not only in the Lord's sight, but also in the sight of man." One of the aspects of Paul's thought that often gets short shrift is the idea that he was not only calling on his churches to be fully righteous in God's eyes, but he also wanted them to be acceptable to the society that surrounded them. Now, this did not mean that he wanted them to engage in any sort of sin that was customary in the societies in which his churches lived. They were not to worship idols or do any of those things that were commonplace in ancient Rome. But what he did want what his churches to do was to be an example to society, to show that being a Christian did not mean that you were a bad citizen. Being a Christian did not mean that you were a bad person, that you called attention to things and made disruptions that were going against what was happening. It's interesting in our world that so often we see Christianity as a subversive thing. And Paul knew that there was a subversive content to Christianity, but for him it was not out there in the open. In many ways, it was a very subtle effect that Paul wanted in his churches, that they would notice there's something different about these believers. Now, ultimately, sometimes who we are as people of God goes against who we are called to be as people in society. That decision came to Paul's churches. That decision may come for us in our world as we see so much injustice that surrounds us. But the impact that Paul wanted was not an impact of violence. It was not an impact of intolerance, but it was an impact of love and peace that he wanted to see in his bodies of believers.